change and be separated from me. Your whole body just resisted that sentence. That resistance is exactly what this evening is about. Because here is the strange discovery at the heart of his teaching. The people who face that sentence daily do not become sad. They become the calmest, warmest, least afraid people in the room. They laugh more easily. They sleep. They hold their children with both hands because no part of them is busy bracing for the ending. Meanwhile, the people who spend their lives avoiding it, gripping the house, the savings, the marriage, the job title, their own younger face in old photographs, lose everything twice. Once in fear, long before anything goes, and once more when it goes. The fear is the part you can do something about. The Buddha left a cure for it, precise as a doctor's, and tonight it unfolds step by step, including the story of a king who had everything, awake at midnight, asking the same question you have asked in the dark. By the end of this evening, the sentence you just resisted will feel like a door opening. From wherever in the world you are listening, you are welcome here. Every cure begins with a diagnosis, and the Buddha's diagnosis is easiest to see in one ordinary man on the biggest day of his life. A man walks across a parking lot carrying a cardboard box. Inside it, a coffee mug, a desk plant, a framed photo of his family, 31 years. Behind him stands the building where everyone knew his name. Ahead of him waits a Tuesday with nothing in it. He counted down to this day for a decade. An hour ago there was a party. Cake, speeches, a card signed by people who meant every word. And now he stands at his car with the box balanced on the roof, and he cannot make his hand open the door. Some part of him has just finished the math. Tomorrow morning, the phone will stay silent. The problems that needed him will be solved by someone else. The title that answered the question, "Who are you?" will be gone by lunch. Pay close attention to this man, because nothing bad happened to him. He is healthy. The pension cleared. His wife is glad to have him home. He received the exact change he spent 10 years asking for, delivered on schedule, with cake. And it is quietly breaking his heart. Hold that puzzle, because it is your puzzle too. Somewhere in your life, there is a change that should not hurt, and it hurts. The promotion that arrived with a strange dread underneath it. The house finally paid off, and a flatness where the joy was supposed to be. The child who no longer needs help with anything, which is what you worked for all those years, which is exactly why it aches. If change only wounded us when it took something precious, grief would be simple to predict. It wounds us in far stranger places than that. And until you understand why, you will keep bracing against the wrong things. The Buddha spent 45 years watching this puzzle walk up to him in every form it takes. Farmers who lost harvests. Kings who lost sleep. Mothers who lost children, and rich men who had lost nothing at all and still could not rest. Out of all that watching, he named 3 kinds of suffering, and you already know each one personally. The first kind is obvious. The toothache, the fever, the phone call in the night, the empty chair at the table. Pain announces itself, and no one needs a teacher to point it out. Every creature that has ever lived understands this kind. The second kind hides because it wears the costume of happiness. It is the suffering tucked inside pleasant things, and it works like this. Every pleasant thing in your life is in motion. The vacation carries a last day inside it from the moment you book it. The dinner with old friends carries the drive home. The best years of a marriage, the strength of a healthy body, the season when your kids think you hang the moon, the money sitting safely in the account. Each one is moving, and some deep part of you knows it. That knowing is the faint ache you feel on perfect afternoons. The Buddha called it the suffering of change, and he said something startling about it. He said this kind reaches the people the first kind cannot touch. You can build walls against misfortune. You can buy insurance, eat well, save carefully, love loyally. The suffering of change walks through every wall because it enters through the things you love. The third kind is quieter still, a low hum underneath even the calm days, the faint unease of a life that leans on things that shift. You hear it the way you hear a refrigerator, only when everything else goes silent. The second kind is where this evening lives, because the second kind is where the fear of losing what you love is born. Now come back to the man in the parking lot, because his heartbreak has an anatomy, and once you see it, you will see it everywhere in your own life. Here is the anatomy. The mind is a photographer. All day long, without asking permission, it takes pictures. Years ago, it photographed him at his desk, phone ringing, people leaning in his doorway needing answers, and it wrote one word under that picture: me. The picture hardened. It stopped being a memory of a moment and became the definition of a man. Then reality did what reality does. It moved. And on that last afternoon, the living man walked out of the building while the photograph stayed at the desk, and the distance between them is the exact shape of his pain. Your mind has an album just like his. It photographed your marriage in its best year and quietly decided that picture was the marriage. It photographed your face at 30 and filed it under how I look. It photographed your children at whatever age you loved most. It photographed your parents strong, your friendships at their closest, your own energy at its peak. Then life kept moving, because life has never once stopped moving, and now the mind holds each photograph up against the living moment and files a complaint. The complaint always has the same voice. This is not how it is supposed to be. Listen closely to that sentence the next time it visits you. Supposed to be According to what? According to a photograph. The pain was never coming from the change. It was coming from the photograph. Your phone has learned to do this to you on purpose. 1 year ago today, it says, and there you are on the screen, younger, at a table that no longer exists, beside someone who no longer calls. You take the hit standing in a supermarket queue and call it nothing. And late at night the scrolling runs backwards, deeper and deeper into the album, and every swipe is a small comparison, and every comparison files the same complaint. Nobody taught us to call this grief. It is grief. Tiny, repeating, unnamed grief for moments that were never designed to stay. This deserves a moment of stillness, because it may be the most useful thing you hear all week. A great deal of what you call loss is actually friction, the grinding of a frozen image against a moving world. The image was made at home. The Buddha had a picture for this too, and it is one of the most practical things he ever taught. He said that when pain strikes a person, it strikes like an arrow. The event itself, the loss, the change, the ending, that is the first arrow, and it is real. But then the untrained heart picks up a second arrow and drives it into the same wound. The second arrow is everything we add. The protest, the replaying, the why me, the it should not be this way, the endless negotiation with a past that has already left the building. One event, he said, 2 arrows, and only one of them was ever compulsory. Second arrows carry one mercy the first kind never offers. They are optional. Slowly, with practice, a person learns to feel the hand reaching for the second arrow and to let it rest. Take an honest inventory sometime. Line up the last 100 times you suffered and look at each one in the light. A few of them were first arrows, real wounds from real losses, and they deserve every tear they were given. The diagnosis, the funeral, the betrayal. Nothing in this teaching makes light of those, and nothing ever should. But most of the 100, if you are honest, were second arrows. The remark replayed for a week. The version of you from a decade ago mourned on an ordinary Tuesday. The retirement that was celebrated with cake and grieved in a parking lot. The mind aiming at its own photographs and calling the damage fate. 800 years ago, a Tibetan master named Sakya Pandita put the whole predicament into 4 lines that people still memorize today. Is there anyone, he asked, who does not suffer on account of what he has? Is there anyone who stays permanently in joy? Happiness and misery take turns, the way summer and winter take turns. Hear those lines again slowly and notice what they refuse to promise. They do not promise you a life without winter. They promise you something far more useful, the end of your argument with winter. Because you have never once argued with winter. Think about it. Every year the cold comes for the things you enjoy. It takes the long evenings, the garden, the warmth on your skin. And you have never stood in the snow shaking your fist at the sky, demanding that it be June. You own coats. You watch the forecast. you plan around it. Somewhere deep down you signed a peace treaty with weather before you could even read, because everyone around you had signed it too. Weather changes. Everyone knows that. And so the change of weather glides over you without leaving a scratch. Now watch what you do with every other change in your life. The friendship that goes quiet, no fight, no falling out, the messages just spacing out until the silence became the friendship. The body that recovers more slowly, the neighborhood that fills with strangers, the role that ends. Same law, same rhythm, same seasons. And here you never signed the treaty. Here you stand in the snow, furious that it is snowing, catching cold from the very argument. The old texts describe the law without decoration. What rises, falls. What gathers, scatters. What comes together, parts. What is young, ages. Nobody escapes the rhythm by being good, rich, careful, or loved. The poor tend to take the changes in the body, and the wealthy take them in the mind, lying awake in comfortable rooms, guarding piles that history has promised to scatter. Change spares no tax bracket. It only varies the delivery. And notice that the law swings both ways, because most people only ever hear half of it. The same rhythm that lowers what is high also lifts what is low. If tonight finds you in a winter, in the thin months of a marriage, a career, a body that will not cooperate, then the law you have been dreading is quietly on your side. Nothing about this valley is permanent either. The texts that promise your summers will end are the same texts that guarantee your winters cannot stay. People pin their hopes on luck, on rescue, on lottery numbers. The old teaching offers something sturdier than hope. It offers weather. And here is the strange part. You already live at peace with this law in miniature, 100 times a day. A song ends, and you never grieve the final chord, because the ending was written into the music, and you knew it walking in. A meal ends. A film ends. A holiday weekend ends, and you drive home tired and content, already telling the stories. You accepted those endings before they began, and that acceptance is exactly what let you enjoy the middle. Somehow, with the biggest things, the signature never gets applied. We say see you next year like a promise. We write forever into songs and contracts. We treat the people at our table as permanent fixtures rather than guests of honor. The Buddha's invitation is simply this: the signature you already gave to songs and seasons. Extend it to everything. No one is asking you to believe this yet. You are only being asked to test it the way you would test a chair before sitting down. The testing ground is any ordinary object within reach. There was a monk in the forests of Thailand, a teacher named Ajahn Chah, who showed his visitors how to do this with a drinking glass. He would hold the glass up in the afternoon light. He said he loved this glass. It held his water, it caught the sun, it rang beautifully when you tapped it. And yet, he said, to me this glass is already broken. One day the wind knocks it from the shelf, or an elbow catches it, and it shatters. And when that day comes, he said, I will say, of course. But understand what happened while it sat on his shelf. Every drink from that glass was a small event. Every flash of light through it was noticed. The monk who saw the glass as already broken enjoyed it more than anyone else in the room, because for him, every minute with it was extra. That is what the treaty does when it is signed all the way down. It does not dim the things you love. It turns them luminous. Try it within the hour. Pick one thing in the room you would miss, and look at it the way the monk looked at his glass. Watch how quickly the ordinary turns precious. So the law is even, and the law is universal. And here is the question that separates the people this teaching has reached from the people it has not. If the seasons cannot be stopped, what exactly is left to do? The answer begins on a mountain trail. Picture a long path through high country, the kind that takes days to walk. It climbs to ridges where you can see forever. It drops into valleys where the trees close over your head and the light goes green and dim. It crosses rivers. It rises again. Now picture a hiker who has decided that only the ridges count. Watch what his trail becomes. Every descent is a failure. Every valley is an emergency. He stands on each summit in dread, because from up there he can see the path go down, and he has decided that down means something has gone wrong. He is walking the exact same trail as everyone else. He is having roughly 4 times the suffering. No trail on earth stays on the ridge. The descent is the trail. The valley is the trail. The river crossing where you soak your boots and swear, that is the trail too. A walker asks one question that matters, and it has nothing to do with altitude. Am I still pointed somewhere true? A true direction is simple to describe. You are becoming more honest than you were, kinder than you were, less owned by what you own. The old teachers called it planting good seeds, acting today in ways your future self will harvest gladly. On a trail like that, every weather becomes usable. Sunshine rests you, rain tests you, and both leave you further along. A person moving in a true direction can lose a job, and it becomes a bend in the path. A person moving in no direction can win every prize on the shelf and be perfectly lost at the top of the mountain. Your life will rise and fall this year. That was decided long before you were born, and no plan of yours will repeal it. Whether the rising and falling means anything is decided by direction, and direction, from where you are sitting at this very moment, is still entirely yours. Feel what happens in your body when that lands. Something unclenches, because you have been holding a job description that was never yours. Chief officer in charge of preventing all change. Guardian of the photographs. Negotiator against the seasons. You have worked that job for years, unpaid, exhausted, and failing, because the job is impossible, and some part of you has always known it. The Buddha's teaching walks in and hands you a different job description with one line on it. Keep walking in a true direction in every weather. That job is possible. You could start it tonight. And watch what it does to the good days, because this teaching is famous for what it does to grief, and the secret is what it does to joy. The dinner with old friends still carries the drive home inside it. It always did. But a person who has stopped fighting the drive home is finally free to be at the dinner. All the attention that used to stand guard at the door, bracing for the ending, comes back to the table, to the faces, to the laughter that is happening right now. People who accept the seasons enjoy the summer more. They are the only ones fully in it. You have seen these people. Something in them is roomy. They hold their plans loosely and their people warmly, and when change comes for them, they bend like grass and straighten up again, while sturdier neighbors snap. You can watch this play out in any house with growing children. One parent keeps trying to press pause. Stop growing, they say at every birthday, half joking, and underneath the joke, a real refusal is hardening, and the refusal makes every birthday sting. The other parent knows the whole thing is water. The bedtime stories will end. The little voice will deepen. The hand will stop reaching for theirs on the way to school, some ordinary morning, without ceremony or warning. And because they know it, they are down on the floor tonight, inside the fort made of blankets, missing nothing. 10 years from now, both parents will have lost the same childhood. Only one of them will have been there for it. The man from the parking lot is 3 weeks into his new life now. Mornings are the hard part. He stands in the kitchen at mid-morning holding his coffee, and the old day runs in his head like a tape. Meetings he would be in, calls he would be making. He has started saying a sentence to his wife, casually, the way people say deeply uncasual things. I used to be somebody. She laughs gently and tells him he still is, and it does not help, because consolation never reaches the place a photograph lives. Then one morning, standing at that same counter, he actually hears it. I used to be somebody. And for one clear second, he catches the trick hiding in his own sentence. Used to be. According to what? According to a picture of a desk. He looks down and notices, as if for the first time, that his hands are empty. No phone. No folder. No next thing. 31 years of full hands, and he never once chose what they held. The photograph says, empty hands mean nobody. His chest says something new is finally possible. For the first time since the cake, he is curious about the difference. That evening he digs the fishing rods out of the garage, the ones that waited through 3 decades of someday. Nothing dramatic happens. The lake is quiet, and he catches almost nothing. But a man who was grieving a photograph is sitting in an actual sunset. And if you asked him now who he is, there would be a long pause, and the pause would be the healthiest thing about him. Stay with his empty hands for a moment, because they are pointing at something enormous. His worth was somewhere else all along. The desk only borrowed it. The belief that the desk owned it is what made the leaving feel like dying. So then, a question, and be careful with it, because it is quietly one of the largest questions a person can ask. If worth was never in the title, where does a person's worth actually live? You have an answer running in your own depths right now, installed so long ago you have never audited it. For most of us, that answer rises and falls with wins and losses, praise and silence, and so we spend whole decades tall in October and broken by March. There is another place to stand. The old teachers knew exactly where, and what they prized most in a person is nothing your resume has ever mentioned. To find that place, you will need to catch yourself in the act. So watch what happens to one person, you, across 2 ordinary Mondays. On the first Monday, everything lands. The email arrives before 9. The deal closed. The client is delighted. Your name is spelled correctly in the thank you line. You walk taller through your own hallway. Coffee tastes like victory. You are patient in traffic, warm with the kids, generous to the slow cashier. Somewhere around noon you catch your reflection in a window and a quiet sentence forms. I am good at this. I am good at life. Second Monday, 2 weeks later. One message, 11 words long, with a tone you cannot quite read. By 10 you have reread it 6 times. By noon you have redrafted your entire career in your head. The patience is gone from your driving. The kids get short answers. And the reflection in the same window has somehow become a fraud, a person who has been fooling everyone and is finally about to be found out. Now hold the 2 Mondays side by side and look at what did the moving. Same person, same abilities, same bank account, same family, same 20 years of skill and effort. Nothing about you changed in 14 days. Only the scoreboard changed, and you rose and fell with it like a cork on the tide. This is worth saying plainly, because almost no one ever says it to us. If your sense of worth is tied to results, then your sense of worth must fluctuate. That is arithmetic, and no amount of achievement ever repeals it. A self-esteem built on outcomes is a house built on a surface that is guaranteed to move, because outcomes belong to the world of rising and falling, the same weather you have been watching all evening. You have felt this for years without the words for it. The exhaustion of needing every week to go well. The dread on the eve of anything that might not. And no one chose this arrangement consciously. It was installed early, before you could inspect the paperwork. Gold stars for the right answers. Report cards read aloud at the dinner table. The cousin you were measured against every holiday. Love and approval arriving, again and again, moments after achievement, until the two fused into a single substance, and the fusion began to feel like truth. By adulthood, the report card had simply changed costumes. It became the salary, the title, the size of the house, the behavior of the children, the number of people who remember your birthday. You have been in school your whole life, and the exam never ends because you are the one grading it. The Buddha put words to all of this, and his words have a strange precision. He said 8 winds blow through every human life, and he listed them in pairs because they always travel in pairs. Gain and loss, praise and blame, recognition and insignificance, pleasure and pain. These 8, he said, keep the world turning, and they visit the wisest person exactly as often as they visit the most foolish. The difference shows only in the aftermath. One person greets gain by gripping it and meets loss as an emergency. The other watches both arrive, knows both as passing weather, and is owned by neither. Look at how the 4 pairs have been blowing through your own weeks. Gain and loss you know from your accounts. The raise finally comes through, and 3 days later the car makes a sound that costs most of it. Money arrives. Money leaves. Possessions accumulate and break and get replaced. And through it all, something in you keeps score as if the number were a verdict on your value. Modern researchers stumbled onto what the Buddha saw, and their version is almost funny. They followed people who had won fortunes overnight, and people whom accidents had put in wheelchairs, and checked on both groups after time had passed. Both had drifted most of the way back to the inner weather they started with. The jackpot faded. The grief softened. The scoreboard, it turns out, can move your mood for a season. Then the mood goes home. Praise and blame you know from your own chest. Think of the last time you received 10 kind comments and 1 harsh one. Guess which one rode home with you. Guess which one was still there at the bathroom sink that night, playing on a loop while you brushed your teeth. Praise slides off in hours. Blame moves in and unpacks. You have sat in the yearly review where 40 minutes of appreciation evaporated in the 2 sentences under areas for growth, and you walked out carrying only the 2 sentences. A mind that treats the wins as verdicts has no defense against this, because it has agreed in advance that other people's sentences are the measure of what it is. Recognition and insignificance are quieter wins, and in some lives they blow hardest of all. There is the meeting where your idea gets the nods, and the meeting where you speak and the conversation closes over your words like water. There is the party where you stand holding your drink while the room orbits someone else. There is the thread at work that simply stops including you, and no one announces it, and you notice it alone. Our generation went ahead and built machines for this wind. The number under the post is a scoreboard updated by the minute, and a grown adult can check it 11 times in an evening, rising and falling with strangers' thumbs. And the scrolling itself is imported wind. Every highlight reel you compare your ordinary Tuesday against is someone else's first Monday, photographed once and worn as a costume. You are measuring your inside against their outside and losing to a picture. Nobody posts about this wind. Everybody stands in it. And pleasure and pain need no introduction, because the body delivers them personally. The good dinner and the head cold. The strong knees of one decade and the careful stares of another. Comfort comes, comfort goes, and it never once asks about your plans. Here is what the Buddha said about these 8, and it lands like cold water. The winds blow on everyone. They blew on him. They blow on saints, scoundrels, billionaires, monks, and every person whose life has ever looked enviable from the outside. No achievement moves a life upwind. There is no upwind. The difference between human beings was never the weather. The difference is what the wind finds to push against. Some people meet it like a flag, snapping and twisting with every gust, shaped entirely by whatever blows. A few meet it like a mountain. The wind arrives with all its force, and the mountain registers every degree of it, and stays. The Buddha showed what the mountain looks like in a body, one morning, in front of witnesses. A Brahmin stormed up to him in a fury, because his clansmen had been leaving home one after another to join the Buddha's order, and he unloaded on the teacher in public. Insult after insult. Loud, personal, designed to wound. The Buddha waited, without expression, until the man had spent every word he brought. Then he asked him a question. When guests visit your house, do you offer them food? Of course, said the Brahmin. And if they decline the food, the Buddha asked, to whom does it belong? The Brahmin felt the trap close gently around him. It stays with me, he said. Just so, said the Buddha. Your insults were offered. I decline them. They remain with you. The man stood in the road holding an armful of his own abuse. The old accounts say he stayed, asked questions, and eventually joined the order himself. And notice that the story cuts in both directions. Every insult is an offering you are free to decline. So is every compliment that arrives wrapped around a verdict. Declining is quiet work. Nothing shows on the outside. A gift is simply, politely, left on the table. The teaching has a word for this ground, and the word is equanimity. Be careful with it, because it is constantly confused with its imposter. The imposter is indifference. Indifference goes numb. Indifference says nothing matters, lowers the shutters, and calls the darkness peace. Equanimity runs in the opposite direction. It feels everything, at full resolution, with the shutters wide open. The mountain feels every storm on its whole surface. It simply does not relocate. Equanimity enjoys the winning Monday completely. The coffee, the spelled right name, all of it, and declines the second glass, the one labelled "This proves I matter." It hurts on the losing Monday, honestly and without pretending, and declines the matching glass, the one labelled "This proves I am nothing." The events stay. The verdicts go. You have met a person like this somewhere. The nurse on the night shift whom bad news cannot scatter. The grandmother who buried a husband and 2 friends in a single year and still laughs from the belly, still arrives with food, still notices when your voice sounds thin on the phone. People like this were never spared the winds. Ask them, and and they will show you storms that the flag people around them never survived. Somewhere along the way, their footing moved off the scoreboard onto something the wind has never reached, and everyone near them feels the difference without being able to name it. Which brings us to the promise from a few minutes ago, the thing the old teachers prized that no resume has ever mentioned. In the monasteries of Tibet, teachers spent years watching their students before deciding who could be trained deeply. They had riches to choose from. Students with dazzling minds. Students with devotion that could light rooms. Students with perfect memory, tireless energy, hearts naturally soft with generosity. Ask what the old Tibetan teachers watched for first, and the answer sounds almost disappointing. Stability. The student who was recognizably the same person on the good days and the bad ones. The one whose practice did not depend on the week going well. Centuries of watching had taught those teachers a hard pattern. The brilliant, unstable student burns like paper gloriously and is gone at the first long winter. The steady one is still sitting there in year 20, quietly transformed. Steadiness turned out to be the single best predictor of a human being who would actually grow. The reason deserves one more breath, because it reaches far beyond monasteries. Growth of any kind compounds, and compounding has one non-negotiable condition: staying in the game. The unstable student is never destroyed by his low weeks. He is destroyed by what he does after them, resigning at every low, coasting at every high, so that 20 years of practice add up to 200 beginnings. The steady one collects the interest. It works this way with meditation, with marriages, with craftsmanship, with raising children. Ask anyone who has done anything well for 30 years. The talent mattered less than the staying. Your resume lists your peaks. The old teachers were reading the line underneath. So the question from the parking lot can finally be answered. If worth was never in the title and never on the scoreboard, where does it live? Run the 2 Mondays one more time and look for what was present in both. The deal closed, and something in you was there, awake, watching the joy arrive. The cold email came, and the very same awareness was there, awake, watching the dread arrive. The applause did not add 1 gram to that awareness. The silence did not remove 1. It was there before your career existed, and it will be there, intact, on the afternoon your career ends. It is the one thing in your life the winds have never reached. When the old teachers spoke about the deep worth of a person, they were pointing there, at the capacity to be aware, to care, to begin again, a capacity that arrives with every human birth and never takes a single Monday off. If that sounds abstract, put a newborn in the picture. Nobody stands at the crib asking what the baby has achieved. The worth in the room is total, obvious, and unearned, and every adult present can feel it. Somewhere between that crib and your first report card, the world talked you out of the plain fact that the worth was in the being, and the doing was only ever the play. The teaching does not ask you to earn your way back. It asks you to notice what was never actually revoked. There is a practice for standing there, and it It is small enough to start tomorrow. Name the wind while it is blowing. The kind comment lands. The warmth spreads through your chest, and somewhere in the middle of enjoying it, you say inwardly, "Praise, wind from the pleasant side." The harsh comment lands. The heat rises, and you say, "Blame, wind from the other side." The number is up today. Gain. The invitation never came. Insignificance, the quiet wind. You are allowed to keep feeling all of it. Naming changes nothing about the weather and everything about your feet. A wind that has been named is a wind that is being watched, and a watched wind loses its power to define you. Run the practice for a single day and count the gusts, from the first email to the last scroll before sleep. Most people are astonished. 30, 40 verdicts a day were being handed down in their name, and they had been signing every one. Include the wins nobody mentions. The parking space taken at the last second, the credit for your work that drifted to a colleague, the grey hair in the mirror. Small wins train you for storms. That is why the practice starts small. People who keep the practice for a season report the same strange result. Compliments become more enjoyable because they no longer carry the weight of a sentence. Insults become survivable for the same reason. And once you can see the wins in your own life, you cannot unsee them in anyone else's. The colleague who cannot stop mentioning his numbers is a man mid-gust, gripping his scoreboard with both hands because he believes it is holding his worth. The friend who went quiet after her business failed is lying flat in a wind she thinks is a verdict. The stranger who was rude at the counter this morning walked in from weather you will never see. Even inside your own house. The teenager who slammed the door tonight is standing in the first real blame winds of her life, with no mountain under her yet, and the slam was the sound of a flag. Every person you meet tomorrow is standing in wind. A few have found the mountain under themselves. Most are flags, whipping, exhausted, doing their best. Hold that image through one ordinary day and watch what it does to your voice, your patience, your judgments. Half of compassion is simply accurate weather reporting. As for you and your 2 Mondays, the forecast is honest. The winds are not going to stop. Next Monday, one of the 2 emails is coming, and no wisdom on earth can tell you which. What can change, starting now, is the ground you meet it on. An email is going to arrive and find a person who has learned the difference between weather and worth. Here is what that looks like in the moment. The message lands. You feel the old reflex reach for a verdict, the way a hand reaches for a railing. You pause for one breath and ask the only question the old teachers would ask. Has anything real changed? Or has weather arrived? 9 times out of 10, it is weather. And on the 10th time, when something real did change, you will handle it better anyway, because you will be meeting the event itself with both hands free. That is the whole trade this teaching offers. The winds keep their schedule. You change what they arrive to. And yet, blame and loss are outside winds, and outside winds eventually die down. There is one wind that blows from the inside, and it can blow for years without a single day of rest. The voice of your own conscience, replaying the thing you did and cannot undo. Against that wind, steadiness alone is never enough. Something more is needed, and the clearest way to see it is to visit the life where it was needed most. That life belonged to a king, and his story survives in one of the oldest records of the Buddha's own words. Picture the richest bedroom in northern India on a warm night, about 2,500 years before the room you are sitting in now. Oil lamps burn low along the walls. The bed is carved, the linens are perfect. Armed men stand outside the door, and beyond the door lies a palace, and beyond the palace a capital city, and beyond the city an entire kingdom, and every inch of it obeys the man lying in that bed. His name is Ajatasattu, king of Magadha, the most powerful realm of its age. He is young, healthy, victorious, and wide awake. He is awake the way you have been awake, not from noise, and never from cold or hunger, because his life has been swept clean of every discomfort money can reach. He is awake because the moment he closes his eyes, the theatre behind them begins its only show. The same scenes, the same faces, the same sequence of choices, replayed with a commentator who never tires, asking the question that has no answer. Why did you do it? Guards can be posted against assassins. Nothing can be posted against memory. By day, he managed it the way you manage yours. He stayed busy. The records of the age show a restless king, raising armies, building walls, fortifying cities, picking wars he did not need with neighbors who had not troubled him. Motion is the oldest anesthetic there is. As long as the day is full, the commentator has no stage. You have done your version of this. The overworking that everyone praised. The calendar packed so tight that no silence could get a foothold. The phone reached for in every unguarded moment, because an unguarded moment is exactly where the replaying begins. It works, after a fashion, for years. And then the body lies down, the room goes dark, and the day runs out of places to hide. Here is what the memory holds. His father was Bimbisara, and by every account that survives, Bimbisara was that rarest of things, a good king. Generous to his people, loyal to his friends, devoted to his son from the day the boy was born. He gave the young prince everything, including, eventually, real power. And it was never enough, because a whisper had found the prince's ear. The whisper came from an ambitious man, a rival of the Buddha consumed by envy, who needed royal backing and knew exactly which door to knock on. The impatience of a son who was tired of waiting for a throne. Why should you receive the kingdom as an old man, the whisper said, when you could take it now? You know this whisper. Yours never mentioned kingdoms. It mentions shortcuts, and it always arrives dressed as your own voice. That is the other thing to know about the whisper. It never asks for the whole crime at once. It asks for one reasonable step, then the next, and by the time the final order left the prince's mouth, it no longer sounded like evil to him. It sounded like governing. The prince listened. He seized the throne and threw his father into prison and ordered that no food reach the old man. The old accounts say his mother smuggled meals in for a while, rice hidden in her clothing, honey spread on her skin, until she was searched and barred from visiting at all. They say the old king survived longer than anyone expected, walking meditation in his cell, sustained by a calm his son could not comprehend. So the son gave one more order, and the man who had loved him first and longest and without condition died on a stone floor. Then came the coronation the whisper had promised. The treasury, the armies, the bowing courtiers, every object of the ambition delivered in full. And with them, uninvited, came the knights. The record is specific about this. The king could not sleep. He had gained a kingdom and lost the one door out of any knight, the simple ability to close his eyes without meeting himself. Understand what was tormenting him, because it is the same thing that torments on a smaller scale in ordinary lives. The past had become fixed. Every other problem a king faces can be attacked, bribed, conquered, or outlasted. This one sat behind him, in a place no army can be sent. He had done the thing. The thing could not be undone. And the certainty of that arithmetic, repeating in the dark, was grinding him down to nothing. Before you judge him, check your own accounts. Somewhere in your past there is a version of this, scaled to your life. The marriage you damaged and the apology you never made. The parent you kept at a distance until distance became permanent. The friend you dropped when they needed you. The cruelty you committed when you were weak. The years you cannot give back to the people who waited through them. You have a room in your memory you avoid entering, and you have felt the wind from under its door on quiet nights. The king's room simply had higher walls. His question is your question. What do you do with a past that cannot be repaired? His answer is the reason his story was written down. The answer began on a festival night, under a full moon. The king sat on the roof terrace of his palace, surrounded by ministers, and the night was so beautiful it hurt him. The record preserves his words. "How lovely the moonlight is," he said, and then, in the same breath, the real sentence slipped out. "Is there a teacher anywhere?" he asked, "who could bring some peace to my mind?" Hear that clearly. The most powerful man in India, on a rooftop, above everything he had killed for, asking strangers for help with the one territory he could not conquer. His ministers did what people do. Each one recommended his own favorite teacher, the way friends recommend their own remedies, and the king listened to 6 names and felt nothing move in him. You have sat through your own version of those 6 answers. The advice that was polished, confident, and aimed at someone who was not quite you. The book that solved a problem adjacent to yours. The wise-sounding voices that never once touched the actual room. The locked one, the one with the wind under the door. When help finally comes, it rarely comes as an argument. It comes as a person who has the thing you need, visibly, in their own body. One man on that rooftop said nothing at all. He was Jivaka, the court physician, a healer by trade, and perhaps that is why he stayed quiet, because healers learn to wait until the patient is ready. The king turned to him. "Why are you silent?" And Jivaka said, "The Buddha is staying in my mango grove this very night with more than 1,200 of his monks. Go and see him." What happened next tells you how heavy the king's nights had become. He did not schedule an audience for a convenient week. He called for the elephants immediately, 500 of them, torches, attendants, the whole apparatus of royalty, and rode out of his own gates in the middle of the night toward a grove of mango trees. A man will put off many things. A man cannot put off his own mind forever. And then, partway through the dark, the procession slowed, and the king felt something he had not expected to feel. Terror. The record does not soften this. His hair stood on end. He turned to Jivaka with his heart pounding and demanded to know if he was being led into a trap. "You told me 1,200 monks are camped in this grove," he said. 1,200 people, and there is no sound. No coughing. No talking. No fires crackling. No feet moving. Nothing. No gathering of 1,200 human beings in the history of the world has ever been silent. Armies are loud. Festivals are loud. Even funerals are loud. The only silent crowd is an ambush. Stay inside his fear for a moment, because it is more honest than it looks. A guilty mind reads the whole world through its guilt. The king had spent years teaching himself that everyone is what he was: ambitious, patient, waiting to strike, and so a quiet grove could only mean knives. People who have betrayed find betrayal everywhere. It is one more tax the past collects. Jivaka's answer has survived all these centuries, and it is gentle. "Do not be afraid, great king. Go forward. Those are lamps burning in the pavilion." Think about what a silence that size actually is. 1,200 human nervous systems, each one a storm generator of the kind you live with daily, all at rest at the same time, in the same grove, under the same moon. Peace at that scale has a presence. It presses on the skin the way a waterfall does, and a man can be forgiven for mistaking it, at first, for danger. Most of us have never stood inside a quiet that deep. The nearest we come is a sleeping child's room, or the first snowfall of the year, and even those can make the chest tighten strangely, as if something enormous were being said in a language we almost remember. So the king went forward, on foot now, into the trees. And what he found in that clearing rearranged him before a single word was spoken. 1,200 monks sat in the lamplight, perfectly still, perfectly silent, calm as a lake on a windless night. That is the record's own image. A lake. Water with nothing disturbing it. The king stood at the edge of the clearing, a man who owned everything and slept nothing, looking at 1,200 men who owned a robe and a bowl and rested like children. The arithmetic of his entire life failed in that instant. Everything he had murdered for could not buy 1 minute of what these men had in unlimited supply. And out of that failure came the most human sentence in the whole story. He whispered it. May my son know this peace. Hold that whisper. He did not wish for the peace himself, because some deep ledger in him had already ruled that he no longer qualified. So he wished it for his boy. Parents in the listening dark know this move from the inside. The dreams you quietly transferred, the hopes you stopped holding for yourself and pinned to smaller shoulders. And there is a blade hidden in the moment, because this son, the one he wished peace upon, was born to a father who killed his own father for a throne. The Buddha heard the whisper, and his first words to the sleepless king were not a sermon. He said, "Your thoughts have gone to someone you love." You know the difference between being heard and being read, because both have happened to you. Plenty of people have listened to your words. Once or twice in a lifetime, someone looks straight past the words to the weight you were actually carrying and names it, gently, accurately, before you have confessed a thing. You remember every person who has ever done that for you. The king met one at the worst hour of his life. Seen. Instantly. Completely. The first medicine the king received that night was simply being read by someone without being condemned. They talked for a long time in that grove. The king asked his question, the one he had carried through 6 disappointing answers. What does the contemplative life actually produce? Show me its fruits, here, now, in this visible world. And the Buddha answered him step by step, patiently, like a man walking a guest up a staircase, from the simplest freedoms to the deepest ones. The peace of needing less, the lightness of harming no one, the steadiness of a guarded mind, the joy of deep meditation, and above it all, the freedom of seeing things exactly as they are. The king had asked to see the fruits. The truth is, he had already seen them. They were sitting in rows all around him, breathing quietly in the lamplight. Notice what is missing from that staircase. Nowhere on it did the Buddha promise the king a repaired past, a silenced memory, or a single night of guaranteed sleep. Every fruit he named grows on one tree only, the present moment, the one field the king had never once farmed. And then, at the end of the long night, with the talk complete, the king did the thing he had actually come to do. The elephants, the torches, the royal procession, all of it had been the outer shell of a single unbearable sentence, and now the sentence came out. Transgression overcame me, he said. I was foolish, I was blind, I was wrong. I killed my father, a righteous man, a righteous king, for the sake of a throne. May the teacher accept this confession so that I may restrain myself in the future. Sit with what that cost. Kings did not confess. Kings rewrote records, silenced witnesses, built monuments to their own innocence. This king said the unsayable thing out loud, in front of 1,200 witnesses, with no bargaining position at all. And the Buddha's response is preserved word for word, and it is worth hearing slowly, because almost no one in your life has ever responded to a confession this way. Yes, he said, transgression overcame you. You were foolish. You were blind. You were wrong. No flinching, no softening. No, it was complicated. No, your father would understand. The full weight of the act, acknowledged to the gram. And then, but since you see your fault as a fault, and confess it, and commit to restraint, we accept your confession. For this is growth in the noble discipline, to see a fault as a fault, to speak it, and to turn. Read that structure again, because it is a door you may need someday. Total honesty about the act. Total openness to the person. Most of us have only ever received one or the other, the brutal honesty that crushes, or the kind blindness that excuses. The Buddha did both at full strength in the same breath, and that combination has a name. Its name is mercy. And now the part that makes this story trustworthy, the part a fairy tale would have left out. The king was not magically healed that night. After he rode home, the Buddha turned to his monks and said quietly, "The king is wounded." Had he not killed his father, the clear eye of truth would have opened in him this very night. The act still had its weight. The nights ahead of him were not all peaceful ones. The record refuses to pretend otherwise, and you should trust it more because it refuses. Understand what wounded means here, because adults deserve the honest version. Grace and consequence run on separate tracks, and one does not cancel the other. The confession was fully accepted, and the harvest of the act still came due, in this life and beyond it, as the tradition tells it. Anyone who promises you otherwise, that one clean moment wipes the ledger, is selling something the Buddha refused to sell to a king. What the turning changes is what gets planted from today forward. The old field keeps its old crop. Every field after it is new ground. But something had changed that no weight could change back. The confession did not erase the past. It changed the direction of the man carrying it. Test this against your own history, because you are the proof that is nearest to hand. The person who could not stay off the bottle 10 years ago is not required to be drinking tonight. The parent who said the unforgivable thing in one terrible kitchen has spoken 10,000 gentler sentences since. The coward of one afternoon has been quietly brave 100 times when no one was scoring it. You have already changed more than you admit. The you of 10 years ago could not have sat still for this teaching, and yet here you are, deep into the night with it. The current has been carrying you the whole time. The only question was never whether you would change. It was whether anyone would be steering. Steering is available. It was available to a man with a murdered father on his conscience, in an age with no second chances for kings. It is certainly available to you. He rode home the same king, with the same history, and the old accounts say he became a protector of the teaching for the rest of his life, a patron of the community, a man pointed somewhere true. The ride out had been driven by terror. The ride home was lighter, and the difference between the two rides is everything this evening has been circling. Because here is the teaching, arriving only now, after the story has done its work. The law you have been learning all night, the law that takes what you love, has a second face. Everything changes means everything. The good marriage is impermanent, yes. So is the man who destroyed one. The strong body will age, yes. So will the coward, the liar, the version of you that did the thing you cannot forgive. None of them is made of stone, because nothing is made of stone. The same current that carries away what you love is the only reason you are free to become someone new. If the self were solid, the king would still be a murderer tonight, and every mistake you ever made would be a life sentence. The current is mercy wearing its work clothes. The old teachers made this practical with one question they gave to people drowning in regret. The one who did that thing, they would ask, "Where is he now? Go and fetch him." And the student would search and find memories, consequences, scar, tissue, but never the man himself, because that man was a weather system that has already moved through. What remains tonight is the one who regrets. And the one who regrets is already facing the other way. Regret is proof of the very turning it torments you about. A person still in love with his crime feels no wind under any door. The ache you carry is the new man, aching at the old man's work. So take one more look at the room in your memory, the one you keep locked. The thing inside it feels permanent because you have never once said it out loud, and silence is the preservative. The king's cure began with a sentence spoken to another human being. Yours may begin the same way, with a friend, a counselor, a letter you finally write, or a quiet voice in an empty room saying the plain words, "I did this. It was wrong. I intend to turn." There is a practical reason the saying must be out loud, or at least in words on a page, and every tradition of healing has stumbled onto it. Shame is a creature of the dark. Inside your head, it has no edges, so it fills the entire sky. Spoken, it acquires a size, and the size is always smaller than the sky it replaced. That is the full formula, unchanged since the mango grove. See it. Say it. Turn. The past keeps its facts. It loses its command of your direction. Notice, finally, what the king actually did in the instant after his confession was received. With the weight barely off his chest. He placed himself under protection, asking to be accepted as a follower of the Buddha, the teaching, and the community for as long as breath remained in him. A man who had trusted nothing but his own grip for an entire lifetime chose, in his first free moment, to lean. Of all the strange turns in this story, that one repays the closest look, because the thing he leaned on is still standing, and it holds a kind of strength this world keeps mistaking for weakness. Think about how strange that ending is. The most powerful man in India, commander of armies, owner of everything he could see from his own roof, was saved on the night he admitted he could not save himself. His power had been useless against his own mind for years. One evening of leaning did what a decade of commanding could not. And that order of events runs against everything you and I were raised on. Because you were raised on a creed, whether anyone said it out loud or not. Handle it yourself. Never let them see you struggle. Asking for help is what you do after you have failed, quietly, at handling it yourself. You learn to answer "How are you?" with 2 words that mean nothing, and you have said them while drowning. "I'm fine." Said at funerals. Said in hospital corridors. Said into the phone to your own mother while your life came apart on the kitchen table in front of you. Everyone around you is saying it too, with the same steady voice, which is how a whole world of people carrying unbearable weight came to believe they were each the only one. Nobody remembers signing up for the creed, because the enrollment happened early. You were praised as a small child every time you needed less. Such a big girl. Such a brave boy. He never cries. The workplaces of the world picked up where the praise left off, rewarding the ones who never seem to struggle, promoting the sealed and the smooth. And the bill for all this arrives in midlife, in the quiet epidemic nobody chose. Grown adults, surrounded by contacts, with no one they have ever once handed the truth. The creed produces competent, admired, profoundly unaccompanied people. It is very good at what it does. The old teaching starts from the opposite end. 8 centuries ago, in the verse this evening has been walking through, Sakya Pandita wrote that the weak, by calling on the name of the great, receive protection. The weak. Sit with how deliberately he chose that word. In his language, it did not mean the failed or the broken. It meant the honest. The person who has done the accounting and admitted the true size of what they are carrying, and the true size of their own 2 hands, and noticed the difference. By that definition, the king in the mango grove became weak at the exact moment he became honest, and it was the strongest thing he ever did. There is a reason the proud cannot be helped, and it has nothing to do with anyone refusing to help them. A cup that is already full receives nothing, no matter how much is poured over it. The pouring runs down the sides. Pride is a fullness of exactly that kind, full of explanations, full of plans, full of the exhausting performance of being fine. Help drop slides off a person like that, and heaven itself could not get a drop in. Humility is simply the emptying. It costs nothing, requires no talent, and the moment it happens, everything that was always being offered finally has somewhere to land. So what did the king actually lean on? 3 things, and the tradition has counted them on the same 3 fingers ever since. They sound foreign until you look at them closely, and then they turn out to be the 3 most practical objects a struggling person could ask for. The first is the Buddha himself, and what he actually offers is proof. Not a god watching from somewhere above the weather, but a human being with a body that ached and a family that disappointed him and a mind that once churned exactly the way yours churns, who worked with that raw material until it opened into complete peace. Proof matters more than comfort. A drowning man does not need to be told that swimming is theoretically possible. He needs to see someone standing on the far shore, dripping, alive. That is the first refuge. It has been done by one of us, and the proof held under conditions you would recognize. This was a man with back pain that flared in old age, who was blamed and slandered in public, whose own cousin, the same envious whisperer from the king's story, tried 3 times to have him killed. Illness reached him. Insult reached him. Betrayal reached him from inside his own family. The peace was never a greenhouse flower. It was tested by the same weather that tests yours, and it held for 45 years in public, where everyone could watch. The second is the teaching, the path itself, and what it offers is a map. You have been improvising your inner life since the day you were born. Nobody handed you instructions for grief, for rage, for the midnight replaying of old wounds. So you have been inventing responses on the spot, in the dark, under fire, your whole life. The teaching is the accumulated trail notes of everyone who walked out of that dark before you, where the ground gives way, where the water is, which shortcuts are lies. The relief of a map is not that it walks for you. It is that you stop wasting your strength on directions that were never going to work. Open the trail notes anywhere and you find this exactness. Take the page on anger. Your improvised method is the one everyone improvises. Swallow it until it leaks, or fire it back and call it honesty. The map says something tested instead. Hatred has never once ended hatred, at any point in human history, and only its absence ever ends it. That is one line from one page, and entire wars, marriages, and family feuds have turned on whether anyone in the room knew it. And the third is the community, the ones walking now, and what it offers is the end of the loneliest sentence you know. The sentence is, nobody understands what this is like. 1,200 people sat in that grove. Every one of them had walked in carrying something. A dead child, a burned village, a past like the king's, a mind that would not stop. Whatever you are carrying tonight, someone on this same path has carried it, is carrying it now, at this very hour, in some other time zone, listening to these same words. You are one voice in a very old choir. That fact changes nothing about your circumstances and everything about the weight of them. People who finally walk into a grief group all report the same first shock. It is the nodding. You describe the thing you were sure made you a monster, the relief mixed into the mourning, the anger at the person who died, and around the circle, heads simply nod. Known territory, mapped by every person in the room. Half the weight of any burden turns out to be the belief that it is yours alone, and that half can be set down in a single evening. The choir is older than any nation currently on the map. The same 3 refuges the king spoke in the grove have been spoken since by rice farmers in Sri Lanka, office workers in Seoul, nurses in Bangkok coming off the night shift, prisoners, queens, dying grandmothers and brand new monks on the same morning, in a chain of voices that has not broken once in 25 centuries. When you lean into all of that. Now, the verse promised something stranger than comfort. It promised protection, and it tied the protection to a name, to the speaking of words. To modern ears, that sounds like superstition, so the tradition would tell you a story about how words can carry weight, and this one has been told to children in Asia for over 2,000 years. A quail chick sat in a nest on the floor of a forest, too young to fly, too young even to walk. And the forest caught fire. Every animal that could run, ran. Every bird that could fly, flew, including, in the oldest tellings, the chick's own parents. The fire came on in a walking wall, eating the dry season whole, and the chick stood in the nest with wings that were only an idea and legs that would not hold. Nothing in the visible world was coming to save it. So the chick did the only thing left to a creature with no strength of its own. It told the truth out loud. I have wings, and they cannot fly. I have feet, and they cannot walk. My mother and father are gone. There is no strength in me at all. And standing on that plain, spoken truth, the chick called on the goodness of every awakened being who had ever lived, and asked the fire to turn. The story says the fire came to the edge of the nest and stopped, the way a wave stops at a line drawn in the sand, and went out around that one small circle of ground. You can hold the miracle loosely. The old teachers themselves were less interested in the flames than in the mechanics of the moment, because the mechanics are the teaching. Notice what the chick's declaration was made of. No bargaining. No performance. No pretending to be a stronger bird. It was made of pure, exact honesty about its own helplessness, joined to a call towards something greater than itself. That combination, the tradition says, is the most powerful sentence a being can speak. It is the same sentence the king spoke in the grove, wearing royal clothes. It is the same sentence spoken every day, in church basements with bad coffee, by people who begin, "My name is such and such, and I cannot do this alone." Watch what happens to those people. The ones who can finally say it are the ones who recover. Truth spoken from the bottom has a strange authority. Fires of more than one kind have been known to stop at its edge. And you have performed small acts of truth yourself without ever calling them that. Remember the argument, the long circling one, where accusations flew for an hour, and then someone, maybe you, finally said the one true sentence underneath it all. I am not angry about the dishes. I am afraid you are drifting away from me. And the whole fight lost its fuel in a single breath. Every couple alive knows that moment. The temperature drops, the room changes. Two people look at each other as if waking. That is the quail's fire going out, at kitchen scale. Truth, spoken plainly from a helpless place, has been stopping fires all your life. Every discipline of rescue begins at this same point. If you look, the physician cannot treat the symptom you hide. The recovery of an addict begins the day the word addict is said in the first person. The marriage starts mending in the first session where someone finally states, plainly, what has actually been happening. Accurate naming, spoken aloud, before a witness. The old stories put a fire around it. The modern ones put a circle of folding chairs. The mechanism has not changed in 2,000 years. The old teachers went one step further and said that words spoken by a purified heart do not merely describe things. They do things. Most words are labels. A person of deep goodness says rest, and something in the room actually rests. You have met a small version of this. There are people whose it will be all right lands like furniture being set down under you, and other people whose identical words land like air. Same sentence. Different weight behind it. What gives words weight is the life standing behind them, the accumulated goodness the tradition calls merit. And this is why the verse says, the name of the great carries protection. The name is a handle. What you are gripping when you call it is the whole life behind the name. There is a version of this you can verify tonight. Somewhere in your memory, a person of real goodness once said a small thing to you years ago, and it is still holding. A grandmother's sentence. A teacher's 6 words in a hallway. Thousands of cleverer sentences have washed through you since and left nothing, while that one plain remark from that one plain life goes on quietly bearing weight, decades later, like a beam in a house. In the high country of Tibet, this became a practice you can hear to this day in any village there. 6 syllables, repeated softly, over and over. Om Mani Padme Hum. The syllables belong to the Buddha of compassion, and Tibetan teachers explain their working in a way worth hearing even if you never repeat them once. The sound works from 2 directions at the same time, they say. From outside, like sunlight, the blessing of all that accumulated compassion falling on the one who calls. And from inside, like a seed waking underground, because compassion is already lying dormant in the person speaking, and the syllables are water poured on it. Whatever you make of the metaphysics, the psychology is precise. You cannot call on compassion even once without rehearsing it. The prayer practices the very quality it requests, and the one who asks for kindness daily is performing kindness daily on themselves first. In Tibet, the syllables ride under everything, hummed by taxi drivers in traffic, by grandmothers shelling peas, by pilgrims counting beads worn smooth as river stones. Ask them why, and the practical ones will tell you. The mind is going to murmur something all day regardless. Left alone, it murmurs worry. The practice simply gives it something worth repeating, and the repetition wears a channel, the way water wears stone, so that in the hard moment, the mind falls toward compassion by habit instead of toward fear. Now bring all of this down out of the mountains and into your week, because refuge has ordinary faces, and you have been walking past them. Refuge is the friend you keep almost calling, the one whose name your thumb hovers over, before you decide your problem is too heavy to hand to someone who loves you, as if love were a shelf rated for lighter things. Refuge is the counselor whose number has been sitting in your notes for a year. The group that meets on Thursdays. The practice you keep meaning to start, 10 quiet minutes that would hold you the way no scrolling ever has. None of this requires a temple. It requires the one act the creed forbids, letting another shoulder take real weight. And here the fear rises, so meet it directly. The fear says leaning will make you weak, dependent, smaller. Look at the actual evidence of your own life. Dependency and refuge run in opposite directions. Dependency hands over the walking. Refuge is where you stand while your legs heal, and every harbour on earth was built for ships that intend to sail. Watch how differently we treat the body. A man breaks his leg, and no one lectures him about depending on the cast. The crutches are not a character flaw. The physical therapist is not a crutch. She is the way back to walking, and everyone can see it. Only with the inner life do we demand that broken things heal unassisted, in secret, on schedule. No surgeon would accept those conditions. Your mind deserves the same intelligence you would grant a leg. The strongest people you know, the genuinely steady ones, the mountains from earlier this evening, every one of them leans daily on friends and teachers and practices, and they will tell you so without embarrassment if you ask. That was never a coincidence. A mountain can hold still in any wind because it is joined, underneath, to the whole floor of the earth. The flag snaps alone on its pole. What the world keeps calling self-sufficiency is, up close, mostly isolation with good posture. The Buddha never asked to be believed. He asked to be tested. Come and see was the standing invitation, and it still stands tonight at the scale of one small experiment. This week, hand one true thing to one safe person. Answer the next, "How are you?" with one honest sentence instead of the two dead words. Choose the person with some care, because the creed will use one bad landing as evidence against all future honesty. A safe person is easy to identify in hindsight. They ask a second question. The unsafe ones rush to fix, or flinch, or make your storm about their weather. The safe ones just move closer and ask, and you feel the ground come back under you while you are still talking. You will learn in a single conversation what the king learned in a grove. The weight was never designed to be carried by one person, and the people who love you have been waiting, some of them for years, to be handed their share. As for the king, the story has a coda that history itself wrote. When the Buddha died, decades after that night in the grove, the community gathered to recite and preserve everything he had taught, so that none of it would be lost. The tradition records who protected and provisioned that first great council. It was Ajatasattu. The man who could not sleep became the guardian of the teaching's memory, and some of the words that have reached you tonight crossed the centuries under the protection of a patricide who learned how to lean. The teaching never needed him to be spotless. It needed him to be honest, and honest he finally was. If the door of your own locked room ever opens, do not be surprised at what your life becomes the custodian of afterward. Turned wounds have a long history of becoming shelters for other people. There is one more thing to notice about leaning, and it opens the next door. The moment you begin to lean, you start to see the web you are leaning into. The friend who answers the phone at a strange hour. The teacher who appeared in your life just when the old answers ran out. The stranger whose one sentence, in passing, turned your whole month. Certain people keep arriving in your story with suspicious timing, and certain others rubbed you wrong before they ever said a word. The old teaching has an explanation for this, and it is the strangest and most practical idea of the entire evening. It says that in the whole crowded story of your life, there has never been a single accidental meeting. You have lived the evidence for that claim, and it has puzzled you your whole life. Somewhere in your past there was a first conversation that did not feel like a first conversation. You met a stranger, at a job, at a dinner, in a waiting room, and within minutes the talk had a strange ease to it, as if you were resuming something rather than starting it. The jokes landed without explanation. The silences were comfortable on the first day. Years later, you would call this person family, and neither of you has ever been able to explain the speed of it. It felt less like building a friendship and more like finding one already built, furnished, with the lights left on. And there was the other meeting. A different stranger, perfectly polite, who had done nothing to you because there was nothing yet to do anything about. And your jaw tightened before they finished saying hello. Something in you stepped back and folded its arms. You watched yourself be unfair to them for months. In small ways you would deny if accused, and you never once found the reason. They simply arrived pre-disliked. As, perhaps, did you. And there is a third kind of meeting, quieter than both. The person who arrived precisely when the old answers ran out. The teacher who appeared the year you were ready and would have been wasted on you any earlier. The friend who moved to your city in the exact season your marriage was failing. The author, dead a century, whose book fell off a shelf into the 1 week of your life it could have saved. Coincidence explains any one of them. It strains, quietly, against the pattern of them. The modern explanations are quick and thin. Chemistry, we say. Vibes. Something about their face reminded you of someone. Maybe. But you have met hundreds of polite strangers and thousands of pleasant faces, and only a handful ever came preloaded, in either direction. The old teaching looks at those loaded meetings and makes the largest claim of this entire evening. Nothing about them was random. Every bond between beings, wrote Sakya Pandita, is woven from the actions of the past. The threads were spun before the handshake. The meeting was a reunion, whether or not anyone remembered the earlier appointment. To take that seriously, you need the word the teaching is built on, and you need it clean, because the world has bent it badly. Karma. As it is popularly used, it means cosmic payback, a scoreboard in the sky run by an invisible referee. The Buddha's own definition was smaller and far more unsettling. It is intention, he said, that I call karma. Intention. The choosing itself. Every time you decide, in thought, in word, in action, you are planting, and what you plant grows into the world you will later live in. You met this image earlier tonight, standing beside a king. The old field keeps its old crop, and every field after it is new ground. Now the teaching extends the same law one startling step further. The planting decides more than what happens to you. It decides who is standing there when it happens. Clear away 2 more misreadings while the word is on the table, because each one has wrecked its share of lives. Karma is not fate. The Buddha explicitly rejected the teachers of his day who claimed everything you experience was fixed by past deeds, because that view leaves no room for the one thing his entire path requires, a choice available right now. If the past determined everything, practice would be pointless, and he built a life's teaching on the premise that it is anything but. And karma is not punishment. There is no referee, no courtroom, no cosmic anger behind the returns. Seeds grow. That is the whole machinery. An apple seed becomes an apple tree without anyone in the sky deciding it deserved to, and a cruelty becomes a colder world by the same quiet botany. Because think about what a relationship is underneath the photographs. It is a running account between 2 beings, of help given and help received, of harm done and harm answered, an account neither party fully remembers and neither party ever closes. The old teachers said these accounts outlast their occasions. Kindness creates a pull between 2 beings. Cruelty creates one too, of a darker kind. And the pulls draw people back into each other's stories, again and again, until the account is settled. Watch how precisely the old pattern maps onto the people in your life. There is the effortless friend, the already furnished friendship. Two beings who helped each other once, the teachers would say, meeting again downstream. The trust arrived pre-built because it was built, stone by stone, in dealings neither of you can produce on demand. You did not fall into that friendship. You inherited it. There is the inexplicable enemy, the one your jaw remembers, even if your mind does not. Old harm, the teachers would say, traded in both directions, and the residue arrived before the person did. This explains the strangest feature of such enmities, which is their emptiness. You can search the whole history of this life and find no crime to charge them with. The charge sheet is real. It is simply filed somewhere you cannot read. There is the mysterious benefactor, the person who keeps showing up for you with help you never earned, at least not recently, the boss who bet on you before you had a record, the neighbor who watches your kids as if it were her privilege, the stranger on the worst night of your life who stopped and stayed and asked for nothing. A debt flowing toward you, say the teachers, from a kindness you have forgotten doing. And there is the person you cannot stop owing. The one whose needs keep landing on your desk, whose crises keep choosing your phone, the difficult relative you alone seem assigned to, and something in you, beneath all the resentment, keeps answering. A debt flowing outward. An account being settled through you. Nowhere are the accounts denser than inside a family. Think of how strange family feeling actually is. A sibling can reach a nerve in you that no stranger, however hostile, has ever located. A parent can undo 40 years of adulthood with one sentence at one dinner. The people you were assigned at birth, before you could consent to anything, hold keys to rooms in you that lovers and friends never find. The old teaching hears all that and nods. Of course, the bonds are deepest there. Those are the oldest accounts. It says, the ones with the most history under them, and you were not assigned to each other randomly. Whatever you make of that claim, it reframes the difficult relative entirely. This person is not an obstacle placed in your life. They may be its longest unfinished business, and the household you share is the negotiating table. The largest account most people ever hold is a long marriage, and the teaching reads a marriage like an open book. Decades of daily deposits and daily withdrawals, the coffee made without being asked, the sarcasm at the dinner party, the bedside vigil, the forgotten anniversary, all of it entered in two ledgers that never quite match. Listen to any couple fighting, and you can hear the ledgers being read aloud. You always. You never. Those are accounting terms, and everyone reaches for them by instinct, because everyone has always known, underneath, that a bond is a running account. The couples who last are rarely the ones with no withdrawals. They are the ones who keep depositing anyway, daily, in small denominations, until the balance can absorb a bad year. Now, an honest fork in the road, because listeners are standing on both sides of it. Some of you hold rebirth as real, as most of the Buddhist world always has, And for you, the 4 patterns are literal accounting, ledgers carried across lifetimes, settled in installments of friendship and friction. Others of you hold no such view, and the teaching does not throw you back. Watch what the frame does, even inside a single lifetime. The colleague you snapped at in your 20s became the manager who remembered it in your 30s. The generosity you showed a struggling intern returned, 15 years later, wearing a better suit, with hiring power. Within one life, the accounts are already visibly real. Every interaction is planting the next relationship with the same person or with the person they will describe you to. Hold whichever frame you can hold honestly. Both of them cash out to the same instruction. And notice how far one planting travels. The intern you were kind to tells the story of you for years, in rooms you will never enter, to people you will never meet, and doors open in those rooms with your name on them, and you walk through one someday wondering at your luck. The reverse travels just as well. Reputations are simply karma with a human postal service. And the instruction begins with a distinction that changes how you carry your whole social world. Every relationship in your life is 2 things at once. It is a harvest, and it is a field. The harvest is what stands in it today, the trust or the tension, the ease or the ice, grown from seeds you cannot unplant. You do not control the harvest. It is already standing. Arguing with it is arguing with last year's weather. But under the standing crop is the field, and the field is taking seed from you right now, in this very conversation, in tonight's tone of voice, in tomorrow's small mercy or small cruelty. People spend decades raging at harvests while sowing, with the other hand, the exact crop they are raging at. The teaching moves your attention from the crop to the hand, which brings the practical word, and tonight it has a deadline attached. Do not leave accounts poisoned. Somewhere in your life there is a relationship lying in the ice, a sibling gone formal, a friend lost to one bad night and 12 years of silence, a parent aging inside an argument neither of you can still explain. You have told yourself there is time. This entire evening has been one long demonstration that there is weather, and there are seasons, and there is drift, and the person on the other end of that silence is drifting too. Their number changes. Their health changes. One of you will eventually be unreachable, and the account will stand open forever, in the one currency that cannot be paid to the departed. Understand what an unmended account does while it waits, because it does not wait quietly. Resentment compounds. Every time you rehearse the grievance, in the shower, on the drive, in the imaginary arguments you always win, you are planting the account again, fresh, in today's field. The old commentators compared a held grudge to gripping an ember to throw at your enemy. The throw rarely comes. The grip is constant. And the enemy, meanwhile, may be sleeping soundly, untouched, unaware, while your hand does all the burning. So the tradition's advice is disarmingly specific. Do not send the text. A text is a gesture wearing armor, deniable, low stakes, easy to leave unanswered without anyone having officially refused anything. Call, so they hear the actual instrument of your voice, which carries what words cannot. Or go further, as the old teachers would. Stand at the door with something warm in your hands. The cake is not a cake. It is a flag of surrender in the oldest war you are still fighting. And be clear about what you are and are not doing, because this stops most people before they start. Mending an account does not mean becoming close again. It does not require agreeing about the past, or pretending the wound was small, or reopening your door to someone unsafe. It means one thing: closing the account clean. I am sorry for my share. I wish you well. Nothing owed, nothing poisoned, nothing left growing in the dark between us. You can do that with someone you never see again. You can do it if death has already closed the road, in words spoken alone to an empty chair, and people who finally do report the same physical sensation, weight leaving the chest that they had stopped noticing they carried. Picture how these things actually end when they are allowed to. Two brothers stop speaking over their father's estate, a dispute about money that was never about money. 11 years of birthdays missed. Nephews growing up as rumors. Then one brother hears a diagnosis, not even his own, a friend's, and something in him finishes shifting. He drives across town with their father's old toolbox in the passenger seat, the one object both of them wanted, and hands it over on the doorstep. I have been carrying this for 11 years, he says. It is yours. I am sorry for my share of it. Notice that no argument was settled on that doorstep. No one established who had been right, because the account was never going to balance on those terms. One man simply decided the field mattered more than the harvest, paid what it cost, and walked back to his car lighter than he had been in a decade. Whether the brothers became close again is almost beside the point. Nothing is growing in the dark between them anymore. And the toolbox sits in one garage now, instead of in two imaginations. Objects at the center of feuds are almost never the treasure. They are the headstone of the account, and handing one over is how you finally bury it. One warning belongs here, because it protects the practice from despair. Fields have seasons, and some seeds are slow. You may mend an account and receive winter back, a stiff reply, a silence, a wound too fresh on their side to warm quickly. Plant anyway, and plant without watching the door. The farmer does not stand in the field demanding the wheat apologize for its pace. Your part was the planting, and the planting is complete, and something has already changed in the only ground you actually govern. The teachers of Tibet built a meditation on all of this, and at first hearing it sounds impossibly sentimental. Regard every being you meet, they taught, as having once been your mother. Stay with the logic before you smile at it. If the accounts truly run back without a visible beginning, then the circle of beings who have carried you fed you, worried over you in some forgotten story is unthinkably large. The bus driver was once your whole world, or you were his. Practiced sincerely, the meditation dissolves the most dangerous category the mind ever invented, the category of stranger, the label that makes people disposable, honkable, scrollable, invisible. You do not need the cosmology to run the experiment. Spend one commute regarding each face as somebody's entire world once, somebody's reason for working double shifts, somebody's last thought. The traffic does not change. The driver does. Which, if you look closely, was always the half of the commute you actually had to live in. Try it in the checkout line, where the category of stranger is at its thickest. The slow cashier, the fumbling old man ahead of you, the mother failing to quiet her child. Each one, somebody's entire world once. The practice has a side effect the teachers rarely advertise. It is very hard to feel alone in a world with no strangers in it. The same meditation that softens your eyes toward the bus driver quietly dissolves the wall you thought was around you, because the wall was made of the same category, pointed inward. And if you doubt that a mere frame, a mere story about a person, can transform how you treat them, run this final experiment, the one the old teachers loved best. Picture a man being introduced to a room. He kept to himself at the back, and the host says quietly, "Be gentle with him. He spent years in prison, and he is rebuilding his life piece by piece." Feel the room's heart make its adjustment. Caution, a little distance. Compassion at arm's length. Now run it again. Same man, same back of the room, and this time the host whispers, "That quiet one is a hidden teacher, recognized by the old masters, here without titles by his own choice." Feel the room turn warm, reverent, hungry for a word from him. Same man. Not one atom of him changed between the two tellings. The only thing that changed was the story handed to the room, and the story rewrote every glance, every tone, every decision about who deserved warmth. Your generation runs this experiment at scale, every day, in the comment sections. One sentence of a stranger's opinion arrives, and from those dozen words a full biography is authored on the spot. Their politics, their character, their upbringing, their worth, and sentence is passed on the whole invented person within seconds. Multiply that by millions, and you have the temperature of the modern world. The old room experiment has not changed. Only the room got bigger and the hosts got faster. Now, the uncomfortable question. Who has been writing the stories you carry about the people in your life? The difficult co-worker, the cold in-law, the friend who failed you, each one walks toward you every day wearing a biography you authored, from fragments, years ago, and have never once revised. You are the host of that room. You have always been the host. So tomorrow will bring its meetings, the scheduled ones and the others. Some faces will arrive preloaded, and now you know what the load is, and that it is not the whole person, and that your next intention is already seed in the ground between you. Walk through one single day as if no meeting in it were an accident, as if every encounter were either a harvest to be met with grace or a field to be planted with care, and the day will feel different by noon. Not because the people changed, because the farmer finally showed up sober. Here is what the day actually looks like. Morning. The difficult co-worker walks in, and you catch the old biography loading, and you set it down long enough to say a plain good morning to whoever they actually are today. Midday. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and instead of the horn, you spend one breath on the oldest question. What weather is that driver in? Evening. You notice which conversations you replayed on the drive home, because replaying is planting, and you choose one account, just one, to stop watering. Nobody around you will know what changed. The field will. And in a month, the field will start telling on you, in easier mornings, in shoulders that sit lower, in the strange new quiet where the imaginary arguments used to rehearse themselves every night. One thing remains, and you may have already noticed it moving under everything just said. Every mended account had a price. The call cost you the last word. The cake cost you the story of being the wronged one. The revised biography cost you the comfort of your own verdicts. Each repair asked you to give something up, and each time you paid, strangely, you ended up richer. The old teachers knew exactly why, and their explanation reaches into every corner of a life, money included. They said the whole art of keeping anything begins with learning to open the hand that holds it. The old teachers put that art into a picture, and the picture is worth carrying for the rest of your life. In his final verse of this teaching, Sakya Pandita wrote, "For those who wish to increase their wealth, the surest way is to share it as it comes. Whoever wants more water in the pond must open the outlet and let the water flow." Read that twice, because it runs against every instinct you own. Picture two ponds, side by side in the same valley. One was sealed by its careful owner, every leak plugged, every outlet dammed, so that no drop would ever escape. Come back in a year. The sealed pond is a swamp. Green scum, dead water, mosquitoes, a smell that reaches the road. The other pond runs a stream out one end, loses water all day, every day, and is clear enough to drink from. Springs feed it from below exactly as fast as the outlet empties it. The pond does not stay full despite the outlet. It stays full because of it. Every instinct in you says otherwise, and tonight, of all nights, the instinct has been sharpened. You have spent this whole evening hearing that what you love will drift away, and the hand's answer to drift is always the same. Grip harder. Hold the money closer, the people closer, the schedule tighter, the doors locked. If everything is leaving, says the fist, then sealing every leak is simple mathematics. The logic sounds airtight. Now Now look at what the grip actually produces, anywhere you find it. Find it in money first, because there it is easiest to see. You know someone, perhaps very well, who has enough and cannot feel it. The account grows and the anxiety grows beside it, in perfect step, because every new number becomes the new thing that could be lost. The hoard never once produces the safety it promised. It produces guarding. Watch the same grip in love. The jealous hand that checks the phone, counts the evenings, holds the beloved like evidence that might escape. Nothing drives love out of a room faster than the fist closing around it. Watch it in knowledge. The expert who hoards what he knows, shares nothing, trains no one, and wakes one morning to find the world moved on and his guarded treasure quietly expired. Watch it in the cupboard, where the beautiful cups wait for guests who are never quite worthy, and the good china dies unused, and somebody's daughter unwraps it decades later, still in its box, never once filled. And the modern fist grips one currency harder than money, and that is time. Watch a well-defended calendar at work. Every request filtered, every favor weighed, every unplanned conversation treated as theft. The time is successfully protected, all of it, and the life inside the protected time grows steadily smaller, because everything that makes a life large, the friendships, the digressions, the neighbor at the fence, arrives as an interruption first. Seal every interruption out, and you have sealed the pond. The calendar stays full. The life goes stale inside it. The sealed pond, every time. What is kept from the flow does not stay fresh. It stays stuck, and stuck things in this moving world do not last. They rot in place. Now hear how seriously the Buddha took the opposite motion. When complete strangers came to him, people with no background in any teaching, he taught in a fixed order, and the record of that order survives. He did not begin with meditation. He did not begin with philosophy, or the nature of the mind, or the deep matters he was famous for. He began, every single time, with giving. Before a person can walk any inner path, the hand has to learn to open, because a hand that cannot release cannot receive either, and a heart in permanent guard duty has no attention left for anything deeper. Giving is the kindergarten of the whole path, and like kindergarten, it is where everything that matters is actually learned. And he made one remark about giving that should stop you where you sit. It is preserved in one of the oldest collections, and it goes like this. If beings knew what I know about the fruit of giving, they would not eat a single meal without sharing it, nor would they let the stain of stinginess occupy their hearts. Sit with the size of that claim. This is a man who measured his words for 45 years, saying that generosity is so valuable that if you saw its workings clearly, you would never again eat alone by choice. He could see something about the open hand that we keep missing. The rest of this hour is for looking at what modern research keeps tripping over the same stream from its own direction. Hand people money and track what they do with it, and the ones instructed to spend it on others end the day measurably happier than the ones who spent it on themselves. A result so reliable it has been repeated across countries rich and poor. The finding surprises the researchers every time. It would not have surprised the pond. Start with the excuse that arrives first, because the teaching demolishes it immediately. I do not have enough to give. The tradition's answer has held for 25 centuries. No one is that poor. No one. The poorest person you have ever met still had a smile that could change a stranger's afternoon. Still had an hour, an ear, a held door, a remembered name, a seat on the bus. Wealth was never the prerequisite for generosity. It is often the obstacle to it, as anyone knows who has watched a poor neighborhood share and a rich one wall itself in. If you are waiting to be rich enough to be generous, you are waiting for a ship that sails away from that harbor. There is an old Buddhist story about exactly this, and it has been retold for so many centuries because it refuses to be forgotten. In a city where the Buddha was staying, a great festival of lamps was announced. The king sponsored thousands of them, rivers of oil, lamps in every doorway, a capital blazing its devotion into the night sky. At the edge of that city lived a beggar woman, a woman with nothing, who heard about the festival and wanted, with her whole heart, to offer one lamp. She begged through the day and earned 2 small coins. The oil merchant, when he understood what she wanted the oil for, was moved and gave her double the measure. It was still almost nothing. Enough oil, at best, for half a night. She lit her one small lamp at the edge of the great field of lights, made her offering with everything she had, which was the offering itself, and went into the dark. Toward dawn a wind came through. The king's lamps guttered and died, row after golden row. Hers burned. The story says a senior monk came at first light to clear the field, and found one lamp still alight, burning as if newly lit, and could not put it out. He waved his robe at it. He cupped it with his hand. The flame did not even lean. And the Buddha, watching, told him to stop trying. That lamp, he said, was lit by a heart that held nothing back. You could pour the ocean over it. It would burn. The king had given from his surplus. She had given from her substance, and the difference between those two gifts is visible. The story insists, even to the wind. The woman with 2 coins outgave a king, because giving was never measured at the hand. It is measured at the heart, where everyone holds equal funds. So the old teachers counted the gifts on 4 fingers, and all 4 are in your reach this very week. The first is the material gift, the obvious one. Food, money, medicine, the coat you have not worn in 2 winters while someone shivers in your own postcode. Small counts. The tradition is emphatic that a handful given with a full heart outweighs a fortune given for the plaque on the wall. The second is protection, the gift of safety. The neighbor checked on in the heat wave. The kid shielded from the bullies. The colleague defended in the meeting she was not in. Even, the old texts say, the animals. A bowl of water set out for birds in a dry summer is listed, without irony, among the gifts a person can be proud of. The third is the gift of knowledge, everything you know that someone behind you on the road still needs. The skill you could teach, the mistake you could help someone skip, the book that saved you, handed on with a sentence about why. Think of who taught you your trade, your craft, whatever you do well enough that someone might envy it. Some of it came from courses and books. The part that actually made you good came from a person, freely, in asides and afternoons they never invoiced. You are carrying inherited water. Passing it downstream is less like charity and more like honesty about where it came from. And the fourth is the gift the lonely world is starving for, presence. The undivided hour. The phone face down. The sitting with someone in their worst weather without trying to fix the sky, which you now know is half of compassion anyway. Ask the nurses who sit with the dying what people regret, and the answers have been collected for years. Nobody says they wish they had kept more. No one in the history of deathbeds has whispered, I should have guarded my time more carefully from the people I loved. The regrets run the other way, unanimously, and they are precise. The love unexpressed, the hours unshared, the generosity postponed until the postponing became the biography. 4 gifts, 7 days, no budget required. And if you want to feel the current you are already standing in, run tonight's audit. Count what you were given today, just today, by hands you will never shake. The road you drove was laid by strangers. The food you ate was grown, hauled, shelved by people who will never know your name. The language these very thoughts are wearing was handed down through 1,000 years of teachers, free of charge. You have been on the receiving end of a flood since the morning you arrived, and you have never once paid the balance, because it was never billed. Generosity, seen from this angle, is joining a river that was already flowing. Refusing to give was always the stranger position. But objects and hours are only the surface of this teaching, and here is where it reaches into everything the evening has taught you. Look at what else the open hand can put down. The grudge from the account you have decided to mend, that is a gift given mostly to yourself. The last word, surrendered on a doorstep with a toolbox. The old self-image, the photograph of the man at the desk, the story of being the wronged one, the version of you that a king left behind in a mango grove. Dogmas can be given away. Being right can be given away. The need for the room to know you were right, which is heavier than the room will ever understand, can be set down like luggage at the end of a long trip. And this is the deepest thing the pond has to teach, so lean in for it. Every act of giving is a rehearsal. The law of change will open your hand eventually, on its own schedule, with no regard for your readiness. That has been the whole evening's news. The giver simply chooses to practice early. Every coin released, every hour donated, every grudge set down is one small, voluntary letting go, performed on your terms, in your strength, while the choice is still yours. The fist meets the great losses of life untrained, and they tear the fingers open. The open hand has been in training for years, and when the great losses come, they find a grip that already knows the motion. The pond and the drift were never two teachings. Generosity is impermanence, practiced as a kindness, instead of suffered as a fate. You have seen the rehearsal working in people near the end of their road, if you knew what you were looking at. The grandmother who begins giving her things away, the ring to this granddaughter, the tools to that grandson, the books, the recipes, each object handed over with a story attached, and a lightness in her that unsettles the family. The family calls it letting go, in worried voices. She is doing something far more deliberate. She is practicing the final opening of the hand while it is still hers to practice, turning what would one day be taken into what is today given, converting loss into generosity one object at a time. By the end, there is nothing left for death to pry loose. It has all already been transformed into gifts, and gifts, once given, cannot be lost. Before the fist relaxes, though, it raises two honest objections, and the teaching answers both. First, if giving is good, is giving everything better? No. The Buddha's path runs down the middle here as everywhere. On one side is the stinginess you have been watching all hour. On the other side is the splurge, the grand sentimental gesture, the giving that empties the giver and helps no one for long. The parent who gives until they collapse teaches the children collapse. Give like the pond, steadily, sustainably, from the overflow that keeps arriving because the outlet keeps running. Second, what should be given? Whatever is actually needed, which requires looking. Wise giving studies the receiver first. The lonely need hours more than they need parcels. The drowning need rescue, and the learning need room to struggle, and mixing those two up helps neither. Generosity without wisdom is weather, without seasons, water dumped anywhere. With wisdom, it is irrigation. Guard the springs, though. The pond gives from its surface, never from its source. Saying no to the request that would drain you dry is what keeps every future yes alive, and the teachers counted that refusal, made honestly, as a form of wisdom rather than a failure of love. And there is a hidden half to this training that almost everyone misses. Receiving is also part of the circuit. Somewhere near you is a person who keeps trying to give to you, the friend who reaches for the bill, the mother who presses food on you, the neighbor with the extra tomatoes, and you keep deflecting, out of politeness, out of the creed of needing nothing. Every deflection dams their stream. Letting yourself be given to, gracefully, with visible pleasure, is a gift you hand back in the same motion. The pond takes from its springs without shame. That is half of how it stays a pond. The teachers of Tibet gave this teaching a place of honor. On the long path of the Bodhisattva, the being who trains through kindness toward awakening. They count 6 great perfections to be mastered, and giving stands first among the 6. Ahead of discipline, ahead of patience, ahead even of wisdom. First, for a simple reason. It is the gate the others walk through, the most accessible of all the great trainings, the one that requires no talent, no education, no quiet room, nothing but a hand and the decision to open it. You cannot meditate your way past a closed fist, the teachers said. But anyone, on any ordinary Tuesday, can begin to give. And here is the mechanism, as close as words can get to it. Every gift is a message sent to your own depths, and the message says, there is enough. The mind believes evidence over argument, always. You can tell yourself you are secure for 20 years and the fear will not move. Give freely for 1 week and something in you starts to relax, because a being that gives must not be in danger, and the depths draw the conclusion on their own. It is impossible to feel poor in the exact moment of giving. Try it and see. The feeling cannot form, which means the open hand is the fastest wealth there is, the only kind that arrives the instant it is spent. So begin. Tomorrow holds a dozen openings, and you will see them now that you are looking. The tip made generous for no reason. The younger colleague handed the trick that took you 10 years to learn. The full attention given to the story you have already heard, because the teller needs the telling more than you need the novelty. Even tonight holds an opening before you sleep. Somewhere in your house or your phone is an argument that has been running on pride for days. Give the win. Not the fake surrender that keeps score, the real one, the one where being close matters more than being right. It will cost you 30 seconds of swallowing. Watch what flows back in. And if the argument is with a child, give the win twice, because they are learning from you what winning is for. And notice, as you give, where the first delivery arrives. Watch closely and you will catch it. The warmth lands in your own chest a full second before the gift lands anywhere else. The giver drinks first from the stream, every time, without exception. The old teachers knew it, the pond knew it, and by tomorrow evening you will know it too, firsthand, which is the only way this teaching was ever meant to be known. Which leaves just one question, and it is the question this entire evening has been building toward. If the gifts cost so little and return so much, and the accounts are waiting to be mended, and the practice is sitting there ready, why have we not begun? You know the answer because it is already in your mouth. Later. I will give when things settle. I will call when work calms down. I will practice when the house is quiet, when the kids are grown, when there is time. It is the most reasonable voice you own, and the law you have been learning all night has one final thing to say about it. What the law says about later is short, and it is the hardest sentence of the night. Later is a loan from a lender who has never once signed a contract. Everything you are postponing rests on an assumption so quiet you have never examined it. The assumption that the future is a shelf, solid, installed, waiting to hold whatever you place there. Look at what you have stacked on it. The call to your brother, the trip you and she have discussed for 9 years, the meditation practice, starting Monday, a Monday that has been rescheduled since before the pandemic, the conversation with your father, the real one, the one underneath all the ones you actually have, the guitar, the garden, the version of you that finally rests. It is a beautiful shelf. It holds your best intentions and your truest self, everything essential, everything deferred. And it is nailed to a wall that does not exist. Because examine the word someday the way you learn to examine words tonight. It wears the costume of a date. It sits in sentences exactly where Tuesday would sit, borrowing Tuesday's credibility. I will do it someday sounds like planning. Open the calendar and look for it. 12 months, 52 weeks, 365 squares, and not one of them is named someday. It is the only appointment you can never be late for, because it does not exist to be kept. And its favorite disguise is the most reasonable sentence you own. When things settle down. You have been saying that one for decades. Check the record. Did they ever? The children were born and things did not settle. The mortgage shrank, the job changed, the kitchen was finally renovated, and things did not settle. They were never going to. You have spent the whole evening learning why. Settling is the one thing a moving universe cannot do, and waiting for it is waiting for the river to finish flowing so you can cross. The shelf survives on a piece of crooked accounting. Each single postponement is free. Deferring the call costs nothing today. Deferring the practice costs nothing today. No invoice arrives, no alarm sounds, and so the deferring feels like the one decision in life with no consequences. But the rent is being collected, silently, in a currency you met at the start of this evening. That low hum under your calm days, the one you hear only when everything else goes quiet. Part of that hum is the shelf, creaking. A life with too much stacked on someday never feels quite honest to itself, and the dishonesty leaks into the silence as unease. People call it stress and blame the schedule. Much of it is simply the sound of essential things waiting. And notice the myth that keeps the shelf standing, the myth of the right season of life. The student postpones living until the degree. The young parent postpones it until the children sleep through the night. The worker postpones it until the promotion, then the next one, then retirement, the great someday at the end of the working world. You have already met the man who reached that shore. He stood in a parking lot with a cardboard box. On the first morning of the season, he had postponed everything toward, and the season was empty until he learned what you have been learning tonight. There is no stage of life whose job is to hold your living for you. Every stage has weather. Every stage has a full calendar. The season for the essential things is the one you are breathing in. And under the whole chain runs the oldest myth of all, that the postponer and the receiver are the same person. The you of someday, the one with time and energy and health to spare, is a stranger you have never met, and you keep signing contracts on their behalf. Now the teaching turns its own blade inward, and this is the moment the whole evening has been protecting. Everything drifts. You have heard the people, the possessions, the roles, the seasons. Add the final item to the list. This, too. The window you are listening through right now is built from the same impermanence as everything it shows you. The health that lets you sit here with your chest rising and falling without a thought. The mind still supple enough to take on new ideas at this hour. The quiet around you. The strange openness you are feeling tonight. The willingness that brought you this deep into an old teaching, which may be the rarest ingredient of all, because you have owned this same willingness before, on other nights, and watched it evaporate by breakfast. Every one of those conditions is weather. They have gathered tonight into a clearing, and clearings close. You know how windows close, because you have watched one close for someone near you. The friend who kept meaning to visit her mother, a real intention, renewed sincerely every month, spoken aloud at every holiday. The flights were always checkable, the fares always findable, the visit always almost booked. Then, one ordinary Tuesday, the phone rang, and the visit became a funeral, and she would have paid anything at all, for one of the 100 weekends she had been holding in reserve. Nothing in her loved her mother too little. She simply believed the window was a wall, solid, permanent, because it had been open so long it looked like part of the house. Windows do not announce their closing. They close the way everything in this evening moves, quietly, while attention is elsewhere. The old texts measured the size of this clearing with an image that has never been improved. Imagine, the Buddha said, a single wooden yoke, one small ring of wood, thrown into the great ocean. The winds push it east, the currents pull it west, north, south, a speck of wood on a planet of water. And somewhere in the deep there swims a blind turtle, ancient, sightless, who rises to the surface once every 100 years. Once a century, one breath at the surface, then down into the dark again. Now, he asked, how often will that turtle, surfacing blind once in 100 years, happen to put its head up through that one drifting ring? That, he said, is how rare it is to be born a human being who encounters this teaching and has the conditions to use it. The image is extravagant on purpose. He was not flattering his listeners. He was doing inventory. A human birth, a working mind, a teaching still alive in the world, enough peace to hear it, enough curiosity to care, all present in one place at one time. Every condition on that list is currently true of you. The turtle's head is through the ring tonight. Nobody knows the length of a surfacing. Understand what the image is for, because it is not for guilt. In the lands where this teaching grew up, the turtle is recited on mornings of practice, the way a climber checks the sky at dawn. Its work is orientation. Wake up, it says, look at what is in your hands, and let the size of the luck set the size of the effort. Guilt looks backward at squandered time and freezes. The turtle looks at this morning and moves. Here someone always raises the comfortable objection, and it deserves an honest burial. Life will teach me, says the objection. When the big loss comes, I will grow from it. Suffering is a school. Everyone says so. So why practice now? What pain will teach me later? Look around you at the actual evidence, because you have known many people whom life has struck. Some grew, it is true, and some hardened. You have watched loss make people smaller, more bitter, more armored, more certain the world owed them and defaulted. You have seen grief turn to grievance and stay there for 30 years. Pain by itself has no curriculum. It is only pressure, and pressure crushes at least as often as it forges. What decides the difference is what a person carries into the blow, the understanding built beforehand, in the calm years, in evenings exactly like this one. The ones who grew through the fire were the ones who walked in carrying water. Waiting for suffering to teach you is showing up to the exam hoping the questions will explain themselves. The calm years are for building what the hard years will lean on. Firefighters do not study the ladder during the fire. Sailors do not learn knots in the storm. Every serious craft trains in fair weather for foul, and the inner life is the most serious craft you own, with the strange distinction that almost nobody trains for it at all. 10 quiet minutes a day with your own breath, in an easy season, is not tying. The day the diagnosis comes, or the phone rings at a wrong hour, the hands will remember. People who practiced in peace report the same thing from inside catastrophe, almost word for word. Something held. They built the holding earlier, on the mornings when nothing was wrong, and it was waiting when everything was. The tradition has a name for what you may be feeling right now, if the shelf and the turtle have done their work. A tightening in the chest that is neither fear nor sadness. The old word for it means something like the jolt, the shudder a healthy heart gives when it finally sees its situation clearly, the way a sleeping passenger wakes when the car drifts onto the rough shoulder of the road. The teachers prize that jolt above almost every other spiritual experience, but only when it came paired with its twin, a calm and grounded confidence, the settled knowledge that a path exists and has been walked and is walkable by you. The jolt without the confidence collapses into panic, and panic practices nothing. The confidence without the jolt relaxes into someday, and someday practices nothing. Together, they make the rarest weather in the inner world. Urgency without fear. The feeling of a person who has stopped strolling without starting to run. You have tasted this reordering once or twice, at second hand. A health scare, yours or a friend's, and for about 2 weeks, the world stood in its true order. The petty feud looked petty by itself, without effort. The children were suddenly interesting again. The sky got noticeably better. You did not become wiser in those weeks. You became accurate. Then the scare passed and the fog rolled back in, and the feud resumed its false size. The jolt the teachers prized is that fortnight of accuracy, made permanent, minus the fear that produced it. The whole art is learning to see with emergency clarity at ordinary temperatures. And urgency without fear looks at this one evening and sees something remarkable. Every door this night has opened is still open at this hour. The man in the parking lot is still standing at his car, and so is every listener who has been grieving a photograph, and the photograph can be set down tonight. The winds are still blowing, and the naming of them can begin with tomorrow's first email. The king found the door out of his locked room at midnight, in the middle of a life everyone agreed was ruined, and your room has a door in exactly the same wall. The safe person is reachable this week. The poisoned account is one phone call from clean. The ember is still in your hand, and hands open. The 4 gifts are sitting in your kitchen, your calendar, your memory, your undivided hour. Even the beggar woman's lamp is still on its shelf, 2 coins worth of oil, waiting to be lit by someone who holds nothing back. The treaty with the seasons is on the table, unsigned, and signing it takes one honest look at one loved thing. Not one of these doors requires a different life. They require an evening, a sentence, a decision the size of a mustard seed. And not one of them is guaranteed to be unlocked tomorrow. The doors are made of the same drifting material as everything else you love. So do the small, honest thing before sleep, and let it be small, because small is what beginnings are made of. Choose one door from this evening, one, and put your hand on it tonight. Type the first sentence of the message to your brother, even if you send it tomorrow. Set the cushion, or just the kitchen chair, somewhere you will see it in the morning. Say one true thing to the person beside you before the light goes out. The teachers never asked anyone to renovate a life overnight. They asked for the mustard seed, planted while the willingness is warm, because a seed in the ground tonight cannot be unplanted by tomorrow's fog. So here is the personal address, and it is for you, the particular you, deep into this particular night. All evening you have heard about changes, the ones that took things from you, the ones that frightened you, the ones you grieved before they arrived. Every one of them happened to you. There is exactly one change in this entire teaching that will never happen to you, because it can only happen through you. The turning. The decision to stop guarding the photographs and start walking in a true direction, to lean, to mend, to open the hand, to practice before the storm instead of during it. No drift will deliver it. No teacher can perform it on your behalf. And the Buddha said exactly that. In so many words, the awakened ones only point the way. The walking has one possible pair of legs. You have spent your whole life waiting for the right conditions, and tonight you learned what the right conditions look like. They look like a blind turtle's head, up through the ring, breathing. And give yourself one fact before the doubt arrives, because the doubt is scheduled and punctual. You have already begun. Hours ago, 100 easier evenings were available, and you chose to sit inside one of the oldest teachings on earth and let it work on you, all the way to this sentence. That was not nothing. Attention is the rarest currency you own. Tonight you spent a fortune of it on your own inner life, and spending attention on the essential is the whole definition of practice. The person who worries about never starting has usually, quietly, already started. There is one more thing the Buddha said, and it belongs here, at the quiet end of this teaching, because it was the quiet end of his. He was 80 years old, lying on his side in a grove of trees, with his community gathered around him, and he knew it was the last hour of his last night. There is a moment from those hours that the record keeps close, and it belongs here because it is this whole teaching spoken at the edge of death. Ananda, the Buddha's attendant of 25 years, his cousin, his shadow, the man who had memorized every sermon, went aside and stood against a doorpost and wept. All that teaching, and the grief still came for him like anyone. And the Buddha called him back and said the sentence that has steadied mourners for 100 generations. Have I not told you, from the very beginning, that all that is dear to us and everyone we love is of the nature to change, of the nature to be separated from us? How could it be otherwise? Hear where that sentence stands. At the deathbed of the person Ananda loved most, the teaching did not cancel the loss, and it did not scold the tears. It held them. The sentence you resisted at the beginning of this evening turns out to be the one the Buddha reached for at the end of his own life, as comfort for the person crying hardest in the room. A teacher's final sentence is a teacher's whole life, distilled. He could have chosen comfort. He could have chosen doctrine. He chose this. All conditioned things are subject to decay. Strive on with diligence. Hear both halves, because they are the whole evening in 9 words. The first half is everything you have learned tonight. The drift, the seasons, the photographs, the loosening current that takes what you love and takes your worst self with it. And the second half is what a dying man thought you should do about it, with his final breath available for exactly one instruction. He did not say, "Be afraid." He did not say, "Hold tighter." He said, "Use the time." Then he closed his eyes, and the teaching passed into the hands of everyone who has ever heard it since, which now, tonight, includes you. And strangely, the urgency does not land as pressure. Feel it in your body right now and check. It lands as aliveness. Notice what the room feels like at this depth of the night. Quieter than it was. More exact. The objects around you have edges again, the way they do in the 2 accurate weeks after a scare, except nothing bad had to happen this time. That is what a usable hour feels like from the inside. The hour became valuable, and valuable hours wake something up. This hour is usable. So is the one after it. And the first use of a usable hour is the simplest one there is, the one the turning has always started with, in every century, for every person who ever made it, arriving completely inside the breath that is happening now. So arrive. Feel the breath come in without being asked, and leave without being kept. It has been practicing this teaching your whole life, receiving fully, releasing fully, never once holding on, and it has never lost a single thing that mattered. Let the days ahead be weather. Walk in a true direction through all of them, and let the hills and the valleys both be the path. When the weight grows heavy, lean, the way a king once leaned at midnight, and hand someone who loves you their share. Somewhere a phone number is waiting, and a doorstep, and a person who will hear your voice and feel the ice begin to move. Go gently there, while the going is yours. And each day, give one small thing away, an hour, a kindness, the last word, and feel the springs refill what the outlet released. The pond with an open outlet is always emptying. It is always full. It is always fresh. Water arrives, water leaves, and between the arriving and the leaving, there is nothing missing, nothing stagnant, nothing afraid. What you love will drift away. That was never the tragedy. It is the current every loved thing arrived on, and the same water that carries things from you is carrying new mornings toward you, even now, even tonight. The sentence that once felt like a threat has become a door, and the door is open, and the evening air is moving through it, softly, like breath. There is a sentence the Buddha asked ordinary people, farmers, parents, merchants, to repeat to themselves again and again. Most people today could not finish it out loud. It goes like this: everything dear to me and everyone I love will one day change and be separated from me. Your whole body just resisted that sentence. That resistance is exactly what this evening is about. Because here is the strange discovery at the heart of his teaching. The people who face that sentence daily do not become sad. They become the calmest, warmest, least afraid people in the room. They laugh more easily. They sleep. They hold their children with both hands because no part of them is busy bracing for the ending. Meanwhile, the people who spend their lives avoiding it, gripping the house, the savings, the marriage, the job title, their own younger face in old photographs, lose everything twice. Once in fear, long before anything goes, and once more when it goes. The fear is the part you can do something about. The Buddha left a cure for it, precise as a doctor's, and tonight it unfolds step by step, including the story of a king who had everything, awake at midnight, asking the same question you have asked in the dark. By the end of this evening, the sentence you just resisted will feel like a door opening. From wherever in the world you are listening, you are welcome here. Every cure begins with a diagnosis, and the Buddha's diagnosis is easiest to see in one ordinary man on the biggest day of his life. A man walks across a parking lot carrying a cardboard box. Inside it, a coffee mug, a desk plant, a framed photo of his family, 31 years. Behind him stands the building where everyone knew his name. Ahead of him waits a Tuesday with nothing in it. He counted down to this day for a decade. An hour ago there was a party. Cake, speeches, a card signed by people who meant every word. And now he stands at his car with the box balanced on the roof, and he cannot make his hand open the door. Some part of him has just finished the math. Tomorrow morning, the phone will stay silent. The problems that needed him will be solved by someone else. The title that answered the question, "Who are you?" will be gone by lunch. Pay close attention to this man, because nothing bad happened to him. He is healthy. The pension cleared. His wife is glad to have him home. He received the exact change he spent 10 years asking for, delivered on schedule, with cake. And it is quietly breaking his heart. Hold that puzzle, because it is your puzzle too. Somewhere in your life, there is a change that should not hurt, and it hurts. The promotion that arrived with a strange dread underneath it. The house finally paid off, and a flatness where the joy was supposed to be. The child who no longer needs help with anything, which is what you worked for all those years, which is exactly why it aches. If change only wounded us when it took something precious, grief would be simple to predict. It wounds us in far stranger places than that. And until you understand why, you will keep bracing against the wrong things. The Buddha spent 45 years watching this puzzle walk up to him in every form it takes. Farmers who lost harvests. Kings who lost sleep. Mothers who lost children, and rich men who had lost nothing at all and still could not rest. Out of all that watching, he named 3 kinds of suffering, and you already know each one personally. The first kind is obvious. The toothache, the fever, the phone call in the night, the empty chair at the table. Pain announces itself, and no one needs a teacher to point it out. Every creature that has ever lived understands this kind. The second kind hides, because it wears the costume of happiness. It is the suffering tucked inside pleasant things, and it works like this. Every pleasant thing in your life is in motion. The vacation carries a last day inside it from the moment you book it. The dinner with old friends carries the drive home. The best years of a marriage, the strength of a healthy body, the season when your kids think you hang the moon, the money sitting safely in the account. Each one is moving, and some deep part of you knows it. That knowing is the faint ache you feel on perfect afternoons. The Buddha called it the suffering of change, and he said something startling about it. He said this kind reaches the people the first kind cannot touch. You can build walls against misfortune. You can buy insurance, eat well, save carefully, love loyally. The suffering of change walks through every wall because it enters through the things you love. The third kind is quieter still, a low hum underneath even the calm days, the faint unease of a life that leans on things that shift. You hear it the way you hear a refrigerator, only when everything else goes silent. The second kind is where this evening lives, because the second kind is where the fear of losing what you love is born. Now come back to the man in the parking lot, because his heartbreak has an anatomy, and once you see it, you will see it everywhere in your own life. Here is the anatomy. The mind is a photographer. All day long, without asking permission, it takes pictures. Years ago, it photographed him at his desk, phone ringing, people leaning in his doorway needing answers, and it wrote one word under that picture: me. The picture hardened. It stopped being a memory of a moment and became the definition of a man. Then reality did what reality does. It moved. And on that last afternoon, the living man walked out of the building while the photograph stayed at the desk, and the distance between them is the exact shape of his pain. Your mind has an album just like his. It photographed your marriage in its best year and quietly decided that picture was the marriage. It photographed your face at 30 and filed it under how I look. It photographed your children at whatever age you loved most. It photographed your parents strong, your friendships at their closest, your own energy at its peak. Then life kept moving, because life has never once stopped moving, and now the mind holds each photograph up against the living moment and files a complaint. The complaint always has the same voice. This is not how it is supposed to be. Listen closely to that sentence the next time it visits you. Supposed to be, according to what? According to a photograph. The pain was never coming from the change. It was coming from the photograph. Your phone has learned to do this to you on purpose. 1 year ago today, it says, and there you are on the screen, younger, at a table that no longer exists, beside someone who no longer calls. You take the hit standing in a supermarket queue and call it nothing. And late at night, the scrolling runs backwards, deeper and deeper into the album, and every swipe is a small comparison, and every comparison files the same complaint. Nobody taught us to call this grief. It is grief. Tiny, repeating, unnamed grief for moments that were never designed to stay. This deserves a moment of stillness, because it may be the most useful thing you hear all week. A great deal of what you call loss is actually friction, the grinding of a frozen image against a moving world. The image was made at home. The Buddha had a picture for this too, and it is one of the most practical things he ever taught. He said that when pain strikes a person, it strikes like an arrow. The event itself, the loss, the change, the ending, that is the first arrow, and it is real. But then the untrained heart picks up a second arrow and drives it into the same wound. The second arrow is everything we add. The protest, the replaying, the why me, the it should not be this way, the endless negotiation with a past that has already left the building. One event, he said, 2 arrows, and only one of them was ever compulsory. Second arrows carry one mercy the first kind never offers. They are optional. Slowly, with practice, a person learns to feel the hand reaching for the second arrow and to let it rest. Take an honest inventory sometime. Line up the last 100 times you suffered and look at each one in the light. A few of them were first arrows, real wounds from real losses, and they deserve every tear they were given. The diagnosis, the funeral, the betrayal. Nothing in this teaching makes light of those, and nothing ever should. But most of the 100, if you are honest, were second arrows. The remark replayed for a week. The version of you from a decade ago mourned on an ordinary Tuesday. The retirement that was celebrated with cake and grieved in a parking lot. The mind aiming at its own photographs and calling the damage fate. 800 years ago, a Tibetan master named Sakya Pandita put the whole predicament into 4 lines that people still memorize today. Is there anyone, he asked, who does not suffer on account of what he has? Is there anyone who stays permanently in joy? Happiness and misery take turns, the way summer and winter take turns. Hear those lines again slowly and notice what they refuse to promise. They do not promise you a life without winter. They promise you something far more useful, the end of your argument with winter. Because you have never once argued with winter, think about it. Every year the cold comes for the things you enjoy. It takes the long evenings, the garden, the warmth on your skin. And you have never stood in the snow shaking your fist at the sky, demanding that it be June. You own coats. You watch the forecast. You plan around it. Somewhere deep down you signed a peace treaty with weather before you could even read, because everyone around you had signed it too. Weather changes. Everyone knows that. And so the change of weather glides over you without leaving a scratch. Now watch what you do with every other change in your life. The friendship that goes quiet, no fight, no falling out, the messages just spacing out until the silence became the friendship. The body that recovers more slowly, the neighborhood that fills with strangers, the role that ends. Same law, same rhythm, same seasons. And here you never signed the treaty. Here you stand in the snow, furious that it is snowing, catching cold from the very argument. The old texts describe the law without decoration. What rises, falls. What gathers, scatters. What comes together, parts. What is young, ages. Nobody escapes the rhythm by being good, rich, careful, or loved. The poor tend to take the changes in the body, and the wealthy take them in the mind, lying awake in comfortable rooms, guarding piles that history has promised to scatter. Change spares no tax bracket. It only varies the delivery. And notice that the law swings both ways, because most people only ever hear half of it. The same rhythm that lowers what is high also lifts what is low. If tonight finds you in a winter, in the thin months of a marriage, a career, a body that will not cooperate, then the law you have been dreading is quietly on your side. Nothing about this valley is permanent either. The texts that promise your summers will end are the same texts that guarantee your winters cannot stay. People pin their hopes on luck, on rescue, on lottery numbers. The old teaching offers something sturdier than hope. It offers weather. And here is the strange part. You already live at peace with this law in miniature, 100 times a day. A song ends, and you never grieve the final chord, because the ending was written into the music, and you knew it walking in. A meal ends. A film ends. A holiday weekend ends, and you drive home tired and content, already telling the stories. You accepted those endings before they began, and that acceptance is exactly what let you enjoy the middle. Somehow, with the biggest things, the signature never gets applied. We say see you next year like a promise. We write forever into songs and contracts. We treat the people at our table as permanent fixtures rather than guests of honor. The Buddha's invitation is simply this: the signature you already gave to songs and seasons. Extend it to everything. No one is asking you to believe this yet. You are only being asked to test it, the way you would test a chair before